So the name of my talk, or the topic that you were all invited here for, was what to invest in and what to build. And when I heard that topic, I thought, wow, that really sucks. Sucks for me. And the reason is, from a logical standpoint, if I'm really compelling on that topic and everybody says, wow, that guy is really smart, we're going to go build and invest in those things, then it's definitely going to end up being like really bad advice because like the market will be totally overcrowded. And then if I'm not compelling and everybody's just sitting here tweeting, then like, why did I come here? I could have been home catching up on TMZ. So with that as a backdrop, thank you and good night. But what I thought that I'd talk about is a bit about kind of my perspective on the environment from kind of a historical standpoint, and then what that means going forward. So I thought I'd take a quick look back at a big kind of platform shift that happened before, because I believe we're in the middle of a really interesting platform shift now. And the last like kind of legendary, or one of the first legendary platform shifts in computing was the shift from mainframe to client server. And you have to remember, at that time, the big vendor in mainframes was IBM. And IBM was so powerful. They were like, people think Google's powerful now and Apple's powerful, but compared to IBM, like they were really, really nothing. In that IBM, at that time, not only owned all like mainframes, but all of networking, all of storage, all of software, all of databases, all of management software. Everything was dominated by IBM, the entire industry. And they were so powerful that their sales motto was, nobody ever got fired for buying from IBM. With the implication, of course, being, if you buy our competitors' products, you're sure enough getting fired. And if you don't get fired, I'll make sure you get fired. So like with a vendor that powerful, how, what were the opportunities then and how did it happen? And the interesting thing was, so mainframes were super expensive. And then there were kind of smaller computers coming up from vendors like DEC and Sun that were much cheaper, much better. But as those computers came out and as those new servers came out, it didn't really change the market. IBM was still dominating. Those vendors were very, very, very small until another shift happened, which was the shift in database technology. And back in those days, the dominant database technology was something called the hierarchical database. And it was dominated, again, by IBM with a product called IMS. And the way hierarchical databases worked was that you literally had to, as a programmer, traverse the database hierarchy and get the record. So there was none of this select star from customer where likes equal Charlie Sheen. Like that was not how you programmed. In fact, like that program in the old days would have taken you, maybe several hundred lines of code just to go get that record or go get that set of records. And so the relational database technology, and many people here probably are like, oh no, we're on to NoSQL and all these other things. But in those days, it was like quite the thing. It was like all the rage. I remember when I first heard about it, I was like, oh, snap, you can just like tell the database what you want. And so it was a really big deal. But even that didn't quite change things, because on the mainframe, we used to pay per MIP per minute. And so if you had a database, like a relational database, that did all this work and all this thinking to go get these records, it was wasting MIPS. And that was just like, that was not happening. You had to squeeze every single MIP out of that box because you were paying for every single MIP you were using. But then, when relational databases showed up on client server, on the smaller servers, on the mini computers, then all of a sudden they became feasible because you were no longer, the economics changed, and you were no longer paying per MIP per minute. So now, relational databases were a real thing. And interestingly, IBM had invented the relational database, but they weren't the company that dominated it because they were still tied to the mainframe where nobody wanted that technology. And once you had a relational database, which was radically easier to program than a hierarchical database, the next thing that happened was every single application got rewritten. Every single one, like all of the HR applications, all the finance applications, everything was rewritten by new companies. And so there were all these huge new companies that emerged. And then there was another giant set of applications that were written that just didn't exist before. And then when the client was replaced, from a dumb terminal to a PC, it started to evolve. And eventually, it got things like Windows. And with Windows and mice and these great new technologies, consumers had them. And that's what led to the original consumerization of the enterprise, where people at home would have these computers that were much more powerful than their computers at work, and they were like, we want this at work. And that turned over a thing and created giant new companies like Microsoft. And it didn't stop there. The infrastructure then opened up and changed, and new companies like EMC and Cisco emerged. So the entire computing industry got rewritten. The most powerful company in the world got completely overturned, and all starting with this little change in economics from per MIP to minute to like, I own my own box. So as I say in my favorite show, Battlestar Galactica, all this has happened before, and all this will happen again. So we're in the middle, or at the beginning, I would say, of another very similar and interesting shift. First, the shift from the current web to the cloud. And that is, make no mistake, a platform shift. And it's very easy to understand in the context of mainframe to client server, because in the same way that an application developer used to have to worry about per minute, an application developer used to have to worry about like where the servers were, who was setting them up, like how was I going to get another server to run my application. And when you take away that worry, when you take away that concern, and you just say, look, you can have as many servers as you want, just by command, then applications change. And we've already seen this in analytics, but we're seeing it across the board. Every application can be rewritten to the cloud and rewritten better and rewritten differently, more responsive, more scalable, more interesting kinds of things that you can do. And so the whole category of applications is getting rewritten. And as a result of that, all of the infrastructure is breaking, just like it broke before. So networking, the way the entire distributed network architecture that Cisco dominated since the 80s is coming apart. And that's a huge opportunity. And storage is a huge opportunity. And then on the front end, the shift from PC to mobile is as profound a shift as from dumb terminals to PCs. The user interface is different. Location is now here. Screen sizes are different. Gestures are different. The kinds of people who use computers are different. But one of the most interesting things, and one of the most important things to consider as we consider the new shift, is when we looked at the old shift, the biggest opportunity wasn't actually replacing the mainframe. The biggest companies to come out of it weren't actually Sun and DEC. They were other companies. The results, the side effects, the database companies, the networking companies, the desktop operating company. And that's typical of technology. So if you look at the automobile and the platform shift from horse and buggy to automobiles, the automobile itself wasn't really the most profound change. The most profound changes were things like suburbs and fast food and strip malls and oil and gas. And that's true in technology, too. I started my career, or didn't start my career, but started the interesting part of my career, I should say, at a company called Netscape. And at Netscape, we were like the internet when it started. But the real changes, the lasting changes, aren't so much Netscape, which is gone as a company, but things like Facebook and eBay and Amazon and Google and other things that we really didn't contemplate in those days, because the original applications then were not what you'd expect. There was a guy in London who had his Indian restaurant menu up, and the most exciting application was somebody put up a webcam of a coffee pot so that they would know when, like, the coffee pot was empty. Like, that was it. That was video on the web in circa 1994. But that was, as I say, wasn't the most interesting thing. So as we look forward, and Twitter, as we look forward and we say, okay, well, what is going to be what are the resulting things to build and invest in this platform shift? And I would say this, that it's probably not what we expect. So there's my advice. You should go build ? But I say that only half jokingly, because the one thing that we can definitely predict about this platform shift is that there will be very, very large companies, likely even bigger than the last generation of companies, but what they are will remain totally unpredictable. Thank you very much.